Hey guys, today we're in the book of Exodus chapter 32. Now, we've been reading the last week of 6 chapters talking about how God is to be worshiped, about the tabernacle, what's going to be in it, how are they going to do this. That conversation will continue, but chapters 32, 33, and 34 are kind of like an interruption in between God explaining what he truly wants, right? So 32, 33, 34, they go together and it's an interruption. And then in 35, we'll pick up more about the tabernacle. And so today in 32, it says, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us." It says that Moses was delayed. Remember, Moses has been on the mountain with God for 40 days. And so they could have thought that the fire that was consuming Mount Sinai and the thunder and the lightning in God's presence has consumed Moses. So they thought, Moses is dead. We need to do something that we know. What do they know? They know idol worship. They know golden gods. This is what they know from Egypt. And it said the people gathered together. Israel themselves did this. Aaron didn't lead them in this idea, but he led them in this idol worship. And so they say, they said, make us a God. And notice what it says, make us gods who shall go before us. Israel doesn't know what God is already doing. God has already explained to Moses for 40 days how he wants them to worship. That this tabernacle, this presence of God is going to go before them and go with them so that God may meet man. And so now they're saying, Moses is dead. We need a God that can go before us. They're asking to create a problem that's already been solved, right? God is going to go with them. And so what happens? They get up and it says, we do not know what has become of him, right? Of Moses. So Aaron said to them, take off the rings of gold that are in the ears of your wives, your sons, your daughters, and bring them to me. Remember, they're slaves. They all have pierced ears. And so they're taking off all of their gold, all of their jewelry. What's interesting about this is we've already read this. This is a free will offering, right? It's explained in chapter 25. And so once again, they're doing what God has already told them to do. They just don't know it yet. They're worshiping a different God, and God is going to say, bring me a free will offering of gold so that they can build all the things of true worship to the true God. And so they do all this, but notice verse 4, it says, when Aaron, received the gold, he fashioned it with his graving tool and made a golden calf. This was Aaron's idea. This was his artistry. This all came from Aaron. Aaron, the chief priest, the one that God has even been talking about to lead the priest. This is all coming from that same guy. So Aaron didn't start it, but he didn't stop it. He didn't start it, but he did fuel the fire for it, because it's through his mind of what God was and what they wanted that he fashioned this golden calf, this agal, which just means a young bull. In Egypt, it was the god Hathor. The cow that would come and it would have horns. In the middle of the horns, it would have a circle plate, meaning the Ra, or the sun god of Ra. And so it was the goddess of fertility and of strength, right? If we want a God to go before us, we want them to multiply us and to give us strength as a people group and nation. And so he fashioned this golden calf. And they said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. They have already forgotten what God has done. They've forgotten the Red Sea. They've forgotten the plagues. Notice that when they're done, they say, this is the golden calf that brought you up out of Egypt, even though a day before it wasn't even made. They're worshiping a fake God, one that never existed until Aaron made it, but now they're worshiping it, saying, "Oh, great, powerful God, thank you for rescuing us." It literally was not even there, right? Makes no sense. But a lot of times, people who are not right with God doesn't make sense. When Aaron saw this, when Aaron saw this, when Aaron saw this nation, this group of people worshiping this God, loving this God, appreciating this God, what happens? He gets swelled up, right? He gets that big head. Oh, look what I have done. That's why God always asks, as we're reading through the book of Joshua, when they build an altar, that it would be made from uncut stones, so that when people worship God, they worship God, not the person who cut the stones, not the engraver, not the architect, not the artisan, but they're worshiping the God. And so when Aaron saw this, he made a proclamation, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord." And there it's the word Yahweh. Now Aaron is saying, we're going to take this golden cow, Hathor, and we're going to put Yahweh, and we're going to mesh this worship together. We're going to worship all of these gods, much like they would have done in Egypt. They did not worship one God, they worshiped many gods. And they rose up early. Notice that they were excited. They were eager to start this worship. They rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and offered peace offerings. Notice we've read in the last 6 chapters about these offerings, right? They're creating things that they need to do for this idol that God has already gave them specifications on how to do this, right? And it says that they sat down, they eat, they drink, and they rose up to play. That word play just means a sexual play, right? And so basically, temple orgy or temple prostitution is what it is referring to. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, for your people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves." Notice Moses has been there with God, and God says, "Hey, Moses, something is happening. Your people have messed up." Just like today, I always joke when we read this passage about me and Laura, right? When the boys do something wrong, they are her kids. Or when they do something wrong, they're my kids, right? That's exactly what God is doing. God is saying, "Moses, your kids, not mine. My kids wouldn't do this. Your kids are down there causing a ruckus. You need to go down." And he says, they have turned aside quickly, 40 days. They have totally turned their backs against God and have gone back to idol worship. They have made for themselves a golden calf. They're worshiping it. They're sacrificing it to it. Israel is doing all of this, and God knows, right? God is on a mountain, but he knows exactly what's happening at the bottom of it. And notice in verse 9, he says, "I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people." This will become a pet name for Israel, and it's not a good pet name. Stiff-necked just means that their neck would not bow. They will not bow to their creator. They would not bow to God. And so he says, your people who will not bow to me, but they'll bow to a golden cow, is down there causing some trouble. Now, therefore, let me alone. God tells Moses, "Leave me alone, that my wrath may burn against them, and that I may consume them, in order that I may make a great nation of you." Here, God says, "Leave me alone, because I'm about to wipe out Israel." Moses is about to be the new Noah of Israel, right? That's where we're at. He's, "I'm going to wipe them out, and we're going to start over with a new Israel from you, Moses." But Moses implored, Moses pleaded, Moses interceded and begged the Lord, his God, and the Lord, "Why does your wrath burn hot against your people?" Right? Moses is reminding God, they're your people. Don't do this. They're your people whom you have brought out, right? You've shown so much mercy and grace. Don't stop now. Why should the Egyptians say, with evil intent did he bring them out? Moses saying, God, if you kill them now, the world is going to see. Why would a God do this, right? He's saying, Moses is telling God, you're going to lose glory to all of the world if you smite them all now. God, please let them live. And even in verse 13, I love this. Moses says, God, remember, as if God can forget. But he says, remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants to whom you swore yourself. Remember, you made a promise. Keep your promises, God. And the Lord relented from the disaster. And God relented the disaster. God pulled back. Not that he's forgotten, not that he did not love Israel, not that he just flew off the handle, but he relented at the intercession of Moses. Moses, who grew up a Pharaoh, Moses, who grew up who was raised as a shepherd, right? The next 40 years. Now, in this process, he can see Moses has become the leader I needed him to be. Moses will help me to turn Israel to be the people I need them to be. So he relented. And Moses turned and went down with the tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God. Notice that, the work of God and the writing of God. Only can the laws of God and the morality of God be from God, right? So all the things that God has told them, that God has told Moses, they are from God because God is holy. And it's only from holiness that we can understand these rules. And when Joshua, that's our guy, right, that we're reading on Sunday morning, when Joshua heard this noise, the people as they shouted, he said, there's a noise of war in the camp. Well, he didn't mean a real war, a spiritual warfare. There's a little illustration here just that you can put in the back of your mind. The simple fact is the ones who are most against God are always the loudest. The ones who are most against God are always the loudest. Okay, that will just ring true throughout your life. Okay, but he says there's a noise of war in a camp, spiritual war in your camp. There's sound of shouting. Everything this is happening. Verse 19, Moses saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger burned hot, and he threw the tablets out of his hand and broke them at the foot of the mountain. Now, when you read this, you would maybe put yourself in your place and you'd say, absolutely, I would throw the tablets too. Moses didn't throw the tablets out of anger, okay? He didn't throw this out of rage. He threw the tablets because Israel has broken the covenant with God, right? Remember, before Moses went to the mountain, God told them the 10 commandments. Israel said, we will do all that the Lord has said. And remember, Moses throws the blood on them, and now the covenant is confirmed. And then he goes up to the mountain to receive the rest of the law. He comes down, and the 10 things that they said, we will do no matter what, one of them was what? Keep God's name holy. Another one is I will not have nothing before me, right? No idols before me, right? So they broke all of these. I will not covet my neighbor's wife. I will honor my mother and my father. So many of these 10 commandments were being broken in this religious orgy to these false gods, right? So lots of things are happening. So they have broken their end of the covenant. So Moses throws the 10 commandments, all of the laws of God, everything that he's received, he's thrown them because they have broken the covenant. And he took the calf and he that was made, and he burned it with fire to the ground to powder, and scattered it in the water, and made the people of Israel drink it. Notice that nobody in Israel stops him. This calf would have been pretty big, and he takes it and he burns it. Nobody stops him from this, but I love it. It says that he burns it until it becomes powder, right? Fine gold, and he puts it in the water, and he makes everybody to drink it. Well, couple things there, right? Why does he make them drink it? one, it completely destroys the idol. Powder into the body, it destroys it. Number two, what was once a god is now dung. It is now nothing. It is nasty. Third, now that it is dung, it is useless gold. Right? No, they would not dig through their feces to get the gold powder to make more gold so they could make more idols, right? So it's just a way of Moses saying he is obliterating not only this God, but any other God that they'd want to create. Moses said to Aaron, "What did you do? Right? Why did you bring the sin on them?" And Aaron said, "Don't be mad at me," right? So it says, "Don't let the anger of my Lord burn hard." He says, "You know this people, and they are set on evil, for they said to me," and we have this big, long quote, right? And basically he says, don't blame me. He's doing this Adam and Eve thing, right? Remember Adam and Eve eat the fruit, and God says, "Adam, why did you do this?" And Adam says, "God, you gave me Eve. It's your fault. It's Eve's fault. It's not my fault." Exactly what Aaron is doing. But notice what it says. He says that we took all this gold and we threw it out in the fire, and oops, this cow just popped out. This supernatural cow just popped out, right? Completely lying. And Moses saw that the people had broken loose, which means in the Hebrew, it means unrestrained. It means that they are in an orgy or prostitution, religious prostitution acts. They are just being just nasty, right? Illicit. And when Moses stood by the gate of the camp, he said, "Who is on the Lord's side? Who's going to say that they're wrong? Who's going to come forth and confess in their sins and say that they're wrong?" And notice what happens. He says, "Come to me," and all the sons of Levi gathered around them. They don't know yet, but supernaturally they know that God has already ordained all the sons of Levi, right, which is Aaron's sons, to become priests. So all the sons of Levi, all the priests come to Moses, and Moses tells them, "Get out your sword and go back and forth and start killing all the people who have done wrong. And kill your brother and his companion and his neighbor." And it says about 3,000 men that day fell. 3,000 was not, okay, the only people doing it. This was probably the people closest to the bull and the altar that they made. These were people that were probably drunk and inebriated and can't really function. And so the worst of the worst gets completely slaughtered. And Moses said, "Today you have been ordained, you have been male, in the Hebrew, male, you've been set apart. Today you are priests for God because you have become at the cost of his sin and his brother." They chose God over anything, right? Making them the priests that God has already told Moses about. And the next day Moses said to the people, "You have sinned a great sin. And now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make an atonement for your sin." Now he knows in Exodus chapter 22, we know that the penalty for idolatry is death. Okay. God has already said that. And that's why Moses says, perhaps I can atone for your sin. Perhaps I can get God not to kill you, right? You have done something very bad. So Moses returned to the Lord and he said, "If you will forgive their sin, but if not, please blot me out of your book that you have written." Moses said, "My life for all of the people in Israel," right? He's standing in and saying, "I will be the sacrifice. You can kill me if you let them live." And he talks about this book, right? You have written in a book. This is the book of life that we see in Revelation. We see this all throughout Scripture, but we also see it elsewhere, right? Pharaoh would have had a book of people who are loyal and not. That's why they would do a census. And so he says he has a picture of God as a king knowing all things about all of his people. And he says, "Hey, if you count them good, you can blot me out. You can erase me. You can take my life." But the Lord said to Moses, "Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book." God does not take Moses up on his deal. Moses said, "If you kill me, let them live." And God says, "No, those who sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. I will kill." Moses could not be the atonement for Israel because Moses needs an atonement for himself. Moses, even though he's a great leader, is in sin, and he cannot pay the penalty for those in sin because he himself is a sinner, right? So he cannot make that atonement. But he goes on and says, now go and lead the people to the place about which I have spoken to you, the promised land, talking about Joshua going to Canaan. Behold, my angel shall go before you. Jesus will go before you. This is the same angel, the commander of the Lord's army that we see in the book of Joshua. It will go before you. Nevertheless, in the day when I visit, I will visit their sin upon them. And the Lord sent the plague on the people because they made the calf and one that Aaron made. This is not an additional plague. This is the killing of the 3,000 that was already explained. And so here you'd say, well, where is Jesus at in this story? Just notice the fact Moses loved Israel and he wanted to be the atonement for them, but he could not. But about 1,400 years later, God sends his son Jesus, who comes to earth and on the cross bears all of the sins of all that there ever was, ever is, and ever will be, and bears the sins. And he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And at that point, Jesus is the atonement for the sins because Jesus knew not sin. He was perfect, fully man, fully God, but completely without sin. And he is the only one that could pay the atonement for the sins. Moses could not, but Jesus could. Hope that makes sense, and we'll see you tomorrow in chapter 33. God bless.